not least the story followed on from yesterday, that Abdul Ezedi fella. He is the one, of course, accused of that horrendous chemical attack. It wasn't just a chemical attack, I have to say. He also went on to hit the woman, the mum of the children, with a car. I do have to say that 31-year-old victim, she is still in hospital. She is sedated, and it's now been confirmed that she has life-changing injuries. I mean, this is the perpetrator, or this alleged perpetrator that is on our screens. He is still at large. This is who the police are searching for. I have to tell you some details about this fella. He came over to the UK on a lorry in 2016. He had not one but two asylum claims turned down. He then was convicted on a couple of sex offences. And then, apparently, because he get this, everybody, he converted to Christianity. He became a Christian. Some priests then vouched for him. And then he had his asylum granted. I mean, I've got to say, Daniel, right, I think this just makes a mockery of our asylum system. I think there are so many people now that know how to play this system. And, you know, you could have converted to whatever you wanted in your own mind, quite frankly. But even the very fact that you've just been convicted of a crime that on its own should have been merit to be out and deported.
Well, I rather agree. And the fact is that we now allow about 68%, I think it is, of asylum claims that are made.
Yeah.
Whereas 20 years ago, we would have been allowing under 20% of asylum claims and the rest would have been rejected. Is that because of laziness? Is that because we're desperately trying to clear backlogs, which should never be a driver of public policy on this, whatever the Labour Party says? Or is it because the system has been developed through legal extensions to a point where it's almost impossible to say no? The fact is, many Muslim asylum seekers know that back in their own country, not in every Muslim country, but in many Muslim countries, apostasy to another religion, like Christianity, is an extremely serious offence, and in some countries it would get you stoned to death pretty quickly. So you can say, well, I'm a Christian now. You have too many pastors, I don't know which particular branch or denomination of Christianity this person was converted to, but too many pastors who are willing to accept these things at face value. And it is, and this is clear, there ought to be some better institutional structures for it, because it is fundamentally a safeguarding issue. If you just accept anybody who says they want to be a Christian, even though, you know, just because that's your attitude, then it releases danger on the street. So that's what happened. But then you go back a bit further and you say, well, after he was convicted of the sex offence, should he have been deported at that point? And the answer is, I'd have thought, pretty obviously, yes. But he wasn't. Why not? We don't know the circumstances. At the moment, of course, we don't know that he's committed any offence. I just want to say that. He is being looked for by the police, but we don't know that he's actually done anything wrong. That has to be proven yet.
Well, the suspect should never have been in the country, but the surprise, Michelle, is that anyone is actually surprised by this. Why are people surprised by this? Our asylum system has been a shambles.
Surprised?
Well, I think, you know, there's a lot of outcry. How did this happen? Why did this happen? What a shock.
I don't think people are surprised.
Actually,
I think the second that the Met Police didn't tell us the description of that person yesterday, I think almost immediately people then knew, they joined dots, and then they know, OK, there's a reason why you're asking the public to look out for content and doorbell footage, but you're not telling us what it is that we're looking out for other than a guy.
And let's not forget, a similar thing happened, when was it, 2 or 3 years ago, at Liverpool Women's Hospital, where someone, very similar scenario, was refused asylum from the Middle East, I think Syria it may have been, converted, in inverted commas, to Christianity. The church waved it through, said, yes, this man's a committed Christian. A few weeks before he carried out the attack, reconverted back to Islam. And he should never have been in the country. And everybody said at the time, you know, we need to learn lessons. We need to make sure this doesn't happen again. The same thing that they say every single time, whether it's the Manchester bombing or whatever, we need to look at how we can stop this thing happening. We need to look at how we can tighten up our immigration and asylum laws. You know, people are getting through who clearly shouldn't be here. They're having their asylum claims approved when they shouldn't. And nobody does anything about it. Year after year after year, politicians, and I have to say, Daniel, your party has got to take responsibility for this, certainly over the last 13 years or whatever it is. promising time and time again, we understand the public concern on this, we understand that people want us to address this, yes, we will address it, but year after year after year, not only do they not address it, but actually the problem gets worse. And we hear more of these types of stories about people having asylum claims approved when they shouldn't have. And we see the numbers go up time and time again.
So what's your response to that then, Daniel? Because a lot of people...
What I think has happened... Of course, the Conservative Party has formed the government since 2015 and was in coalition since 2010. So, of course, it has a share of responsibility for anything that goes wrong in government during that period. Absolutely got to say that. But at the same time, if you look at the underlying cause of it, it is fundamentally the legalisation of, if you like, the making all of this subject to constant judicial review and the extension of law by judges in particular cases. And if the government can have a bill which says that Rwanda is safe and make that a legal, something that the courts have to accept as a legal fact, and they can, if they can get this Act of Parliament, this bill through, then they could equally do something which limited the grounds on which people can appeal and the basis on which appeals can be granted in the courts. And that's the course of action they need to take, but they've been frightened out of it constantly by the whole woke left-wing establishment.
Well, it seems to me like it's some kind of racket, because if it's not sitting there saying, well, I've converted to Christianity, if that card fails, well, the one you pull out next surely is, oh, well, I'm gay. I'm gay now, so I can't be sent back. And the problem that you've got is, how do you prove or disprove either of those two scenarios? What is the answer to that? Meanwhile, by the way, everyone's outraged about this particular case. Meanwhile, up pops James Cleverly. I mean, I'm not laughing because I think this is funny. I'm laughing because the absolute absurdity of it, ladies and gents. He's now popped up asking for an extra £2.6 billion to help with hotel costs, etc., for putting these people up in hotels.
Well, do you want them sleeping on the streets?
Well, what
I mean, the fact is, James Cleverly is a sensible, intelligent man I've known a very long time. And I think he realises a lot of this is very unsustainable. We need to see action from James, but James is the sort of Home Secretary who might just deliver on some action. But in the meantime, yes, the whole thing is costing us a fortune. We still need a way of stopping the boats, which is really where these costs are coming from, stopping the boats.
But I'm astonished that your first answer to that is, when I raise a concern that I'm telling you now, you'll know anyway, it's a huge concern for people, the amount of money that we're spending putting these people up in hotels. Your first response to that is, well, what do you want them to do, sleep on the streets?
Well,
I find that quite an interesting response, because most people will be screaming at their screens saying, well, quite frankly, I don't care where they sleep, but it shouldn't be in the likes of 4-star hotels. It's an insult to every single taxpayer in this country.
They're being moved out of 4-star hotels. But the fact is, I'd be more frightened if you had doorways filled with people. I mean, that's what I meant by that. Not, I'm sorry for them to have to sleep on the streets,
let's be
but rather, I'm sorry for the people who would have to live in that environment.
But you do have to treat people humanely. You know, whether or not the people should be here, whether or not they've come illegally, you know, we are a civilised country, and if there are people here and we have the capacity to be able to put them in hotels or wherever it is in order to give them, you know, decent, warm, sanitary accommodation, then we should do so. We can have the separate debate. We can have the separate debate, Michelle, about whether they should be here, and we can have the separate debate about the collapse of the asylum system and how some of them are gaming the system, absolutely. But what we can't do is treat them inhumanely and say, actually, go and sleep in the woods or go and...
What about creating, building some form of refugee accommodation? People managed to knock up the Nightingale facilities, not overnight, but not far off. What about knocking up some kind of safe, clean refugee accommodation?
Fine, as long as it's warm and as long as it's safe. I think we have a duty to make sure that people are warm and safe, and then we have the separate debate about it. But there's a distraction. The whole costing is a distraction. You know, we need to deal with the asylum system, but if we get sidetracked into a debate about the money involved, I think we're losing sight of the big point, frankly.
Pretty big distraction, I would say.